Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, think about this for a second. Roughly 90% of all global trade moves by sea. It's a massive operation, yet it's almost completely invisible to most of us. Everything from the fuel in your car to the screen you're looking at right now, it likely spent weeks out on the ocean. But just like a massive cargo ship relies on a highly disciplined crew to keep it from literally sinking, this entire global industry requires an absolutely airtight system of governance to function safely. So today, we're unpacking the exact legal blueprint that governs India's vast maritime administration. It really brings up a fascinating question, doesn't it? When you look out at a bustling port, or even just a seemingly empty stretch of coastline, who actually rules it? Who's making sure the ships are safe, the radios are working, and the seafarers are being treated fairly? It's not just the Navy or the Coast Guard out there. There's this massive, intricate administrative machine operating right behind the scenes, all established by strict legislative text. And today, we're going to break down exactly how this bureaucratic engine is built, step by step, rank by rank. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the captain, the director general. Then, the officers on deck. Third, major ports and departments. Fourth, shipping offices and welfare. And finally, port and vessel security.
All right, starting off with Section 1, the captain, director general.
Let's start right at the top of the pyramid. Every ship needs a captain, right? And our absolute captain here is established in Section 7 of the Act. Now, this lays out a very specific, cascading flow of power. It doesn't just happen organically. Actually, it's strictly engineered. Step 1, the central government appoints the Director General. Step 2, the government then officially delegates specific powers, authorities, and jurisdictions down to this role. And Step 3, the Director General can then delegate those duties down to other officers. But, and this is a really key point here, they can only do that with the previous approval of the central government. So it's a highly controlled, tightly monitored distribution of authority, all designed to ensure absolutely nothing slips through the cracks. So the crucial point here is captured perfectly in Chapter 2, Section 7, Subsection 4. This single sentence legally cements the Director General's absolute authority over the entire administration. Essentially, there are no rogue departments, there are no independent operators out there. Every single officer we're about to look at ultimately answers to the general superintendence and control of the Director General. The chain of command is absolute. Moving right along to Section 2, the officers on deck. Now that we understand the top command, let's zoom in a bit and look at the officers who do the heavy lifting on the ground, the ones enforcing the day-to-day duties. Sections 8 and 10 establish two very distinct tracks here. On the administrative side, we've got the bureaucratic backbone, the additional, deputy, and assistant director generals. They're managing the bureaucracy. But on the technical side, we have highly specialized technical officers, like the senior radio surveyors and radio inspectors. Section 10 specifically mandates their appointment to ensure strict compliance with radio communication laws. Because, let's face it, you can't just rely on managers. You absolutely need technical experts, making sure a ship's communication array won't just fail in the middle of a monsoon. And speaking of experts, check out this list from Section 8. All right, take a deep breath. Here we go. Nautical advisor, chief surveyor, chief ship surveyor, principal officer, deputy nautical advisor, deputy chief surveyor, deputy chief ship surveyor, nautical surveyor, engineer and ship surveyor, all the way down to the junior ship surveyor. Wow, it is a dizzying, hyper-specific list. But it highlights something pretty fascinating. Modern maritime administration is so incredibly complex that you literally need a specialized officer for every single component of a vessel. You don't just have a general inspector, you've got an entire fleet of targeted expertise. Okay, let's move to and see how this builds in Section 3, major ports and departments. So, we've talked about the people, but where does all of this actually operate? Section 11 of the legislation grounds this entire framework in real-world geography by establishing mercantile marine departments. You can kind of think of these as the administrative engine rooms operating at the absolute busiest hubs in the country. The law specifically names Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Kochi, and Kandla as the major ports requiring these departments, and each one is headed by a principal officer. These aren't just field offices, they are the physical manifestation of the law right on the water's edge, positioned exactly where the highest volume of maritime traffic demands strict oversight. Which brings us to Section 4, shipping offices and welfare. You see, this legislation isn't only about regulating giant metal hulls and radio frequencies. There's a vital human element here. And this brilliantly illustrates the dual nature of the government's role by clearly delineating Sections 11 and 12. As we just discussed, the mercantile marine departments at those specific major ports focus on the rigid administration of the act itself. But then look at the other side of things. Section 12 allows the government to establish shipping offices at literally every port in India where they think it's necessary. These offices are staffed by shipping masters, directors, and, crucially, seafarers' welfare officers. This means the state is legally obligated not just to police the ships, but to actively protect and manage the business and welfare of the actual human beings working on them.
All right, our final stop is Section 5, Port and Vessel Security.
Now, in today's high-stakes world, administration and welfare just aren't enough without a rigorous security apparatus to protect these vessels and port facilities from external threats. Now, what's really interesting here is the specific mention of the ISPS code in Section 13 of the Act. When the central government constitutes a new body for security, they aren't just making up the rules as they go. The legislation mandates that they must take into consideration the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code under the Safety Convention. This beautifully highlights how local port security in India is directly tethered to international security standards. Basically, the safety of a single dock in Kochi is actually a matter of global importance. Section 13, subsection 4, outlines the precise critical functions of this newly constituted security body. First, they're tasked with providing the overarching regulatory framework for security. But they're also acting as a massive intelligence hub. They have to ensure the timely collection and exchange of security-related information regarding both vessels and port facilities. And they are legally required to coordinate with other agencies. They are essentially the central nervous system for maritime threat assessment, making sure that all parts of the government are talking to each other the second a security risk arises. So what does this all mean? We return to the big picture. We've looked at the Director General, the hyper-specialized surveyors, the marine departments, the welfare officers, and the complex security protocols. It is an incredibly dense, almost invisible web of bureaucracy. But think about this. Without this exact legal framework operating flawlessly 24 hours a day, the massive ships that power our global economy just wouldn't be able to safely dock. Seafarers would be left unprotected, and the supply chains we completely rely on would likely collapse. This seemingly dry legislative text is actually the living, breathing engine that keeps our shorelines safe. So the next time you buy a product that crossed an ocean to get to you, ask yourself, how does this invisible, complex web of officers and surveyors impact your everyday life and the security of global trade? Thanks so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.